Welcome everyone to our webinar, Why the Government Community Cloud. We have attendees today from state, local, and tribal governments on the call, and we're excited to have two technology experts to help us understand more about the Government Community Cloud. My name is Brooke Kennedy, and I'll be your moderator. Joining me today are our presenters, Matt Borkowski and Bill Barkovic. Matt is Principal Solution Architect for ERP, and he has been working with state and local tribal governments throughout his 16 years here at Arctic IT. And joining Matt is our friend and colleague, Bill Barkovic from Microsoft. Bill is the Modern Workplace Solution Specialist with Microsoft. He works with tribes by guiding them through their digital transformations and is our go-to resource for any organization wanting to learn more about this topic. So before we get started, just a friendly reminder to please use the questions box to enter your questions throughout the presentation. And we've set aside some extra time at the end to address those questions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Matt.
All right, well, thank you, Brooke, and thank you to all who are joining us today. Bill and I looking forward to presenting with you together as we talk through first the power of the Microsoft Cloud Platform, just a high level in general, and then really Bill's going to dive into the meat of the Government Community Cloud, or the GCC, as you might hear us say a number of times, and the different levels of compliance that it supports across the different options there of the government cloud. And we'll highlight kind of our partnership both in state and local government as well as tribal government with Microsoft, and then some great examples of modernization success of some of our customers that have made good use of the government cloud to meet some of their goals. And then talk through, if you're interested, how you can get started in your cloud or government cloud adventure there with Microsoft, and have some time for Q&A at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So we all know that when it comes to the modern workplace, what's in front of us, the challenges that we face, is that the struggle is real, right? Whether that's the cross-departmental collaboration, right? So often in government, you have each department maybe with their own little shadow IT, their own databases, own spreadsheets of important data that they're maintaining. And not only is the security of that the headache, but how do you collaborate with that well to provide the services, a high level of services that you need for your citizens, your employees, your other constituents, as well as making sure that that's secure, backed up and accessible regardless, right? And then just digital service expectations. I mean, when's the last time that that you've frequently at least been to a bank, right? The idea that, especially since the pandemic, more and more the citizens of our governments, of our tribes, want digital engagement. They want to be able to do things from where they are, feeling safe while doing so, but again, expecting that their data is going to be secure and taken care of throughout that process. And then process automation. I don't know how many within the last year have I talked with one of our customers or prospective customers where they didn't say that they're short-staffed right now. We're all kind of dealing with increasing workforce demands and the maybe lack of folks in those positions. So looking at ways that we can drive process automation, not just to make ourselves more efficient and dealing with maybe shorthandedness, but then also, again, providing high quality of services for our citizens in the ways that they expect. And across all of this, just changing compliance landscape, understanding your employees' roles, what they're doing, and making sure that how they mapped the different compliance requirements just adds complexity. So as you start thinking through these changing demands or increasing demands, ways that you want to adapt to these in a secure way and compliant way, is really where the Microsoft Cloud shines. Now, when we talk about the Microsoft Cloud, Microsoft Azure being that core component of that, these are kind of a high-level breakdown of those areas that we'll be talking a little bit about today. Of course, at its core, you have the Microsoft Azure platform. Your traditional platform as a service where you have your VMs, your Azure SQL databases and data lakes, and all the ways of connecting that, your Azure Active Directory for managing that security and identity and the compliance across all those. Just that foundation of the data centers and everything that supports that, right, in Microsoft Azure. And on top of that, we've got our developer tools like Visual Studio, first and foremost, and then those all kind of start working together in the expansion of what we call the Power Platform, right? That's where you have your Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, different ways of taking the wonderful functionality of Azure, being able to create your low code or no code apps, great visual representations and reports in Power BI, and building off of your data sets and applications that are in the Microsoft Cloud. One of the ways that most people interact with the cloud, maybe their first migration into Microsoft Cloud, is with Microsoft 365. The artist formerly known as Office 365, and the expanding availability and functionality sets that are part of that. Right, not only just our email, of course, being one of the key components there, but all of Microsoft Office, and then the identity management and security options that are available as part of that, just ever-growing suite of business productivity and security applications. And then at the high level there, where you get into those business applications, those high level important broad sweeping applications like your ERP solutions, your CRM solutions, maybe other engagement, tribal engagement and citizen engagement solutions in Dynamics 365. Just continues to build on that platform. And then at the top here, we have industry specific and partner specific solutions. Industry specific things, like you might see Microsoft Cloud for healthcare, for retail, for government, those things. And those are really just all encompassing ways of taking the various parts of the Microsoft Cloud and then building in additional data sets and reporting platforms that are specific to help those industries kind of launch and make best use quickly of the functionality available all in the Microsoft Cloud. And then, of course, partner solutions like Arctic IT and our GovCase and tribal platforms and other things that are all part of this. Now, when you start looking at the breadth and functionality available in the Microsoft Cloud, we then take a deeper look at, well, which components of those are really applicable or available as part of the government cloud. And that's where we see a lot of that functionality is, right? Those industry component specific clouds right now are just available in what we call the commercial cloud, the non-government cloud. But almost everything else in your Azure, your Power Platform, Dynamics 365 and M365, you're really being key components of how you manage your organizations, being part of that Microsoft Government Community Cloud. That's what we're really excited to talk more today about that. And as I engage Bill about the Government Community Cloud, I have a question for you, Bill. I've heard this a number of times, and even might have said it once or twice myself before I understood everything. And truly, is the Microsoft Government Community Cloud more secure than the commercial cloud?
Absolutely not. It's more compliant. So the difference between our clouds is solely based on compliance. Drive to the next one here. There we go. Okay, so when we look at this, there's a lot of people that talk purely on the commercial side, and then we get into government. So government has a couple different layers to it. We'll talk about the Government Community Cloud first, which one of the fastest ways to distinguish the environments is you'll hear GCC or you may hear GCC high. For now, we're just going to talk GCC versus the commercial environment. You'll note the first couple things, the big things here is there's FedRAMP high on both environments, okay? But then we start getting into where the compliance really matters. So like DFARS, commercial is not compliant for DFARS. CMMC level 1, yes for both, okay? But when we get into CUI, CDI, CMMC level 2 to level 3, that's where commercial can't assist at all. GCC might be able to. And why we say might is when we start talking with CUI, if you're dealing with anything ITAR or nuclear, we do not support that in the GCC environment at all, okay? If it's less than that, you could. There may be some additional controls you have to apply to be able to get to the CMMC level 3 level. That's on you. We only certify that you can absolutely meet CMMC level 3 within our GCC high environment, and we have the down letters to go with that. NIST 853-171, those are just controls that get employed by MDM policies and Active Directory, both environments, and I'll tell you this now, all of the Microsoft environments, even down to the EDU level, could comply with that. But for state, local governments, even for some of the tribal governments, some of the gaming commissions, CJIS. So if you are dealing with CJIS data and you're dealing with it in SharePoint as a container, or you're emailing any of that, or you're storing it in OneDrive, the only environment that is compliant for CJIS is in the GCC container. Okay, that's the tenant where you'd have to be for it to be at that level. Okay. And then there's just a couple other levels there where we talk about, you know, who's supporting the environment, the directory network that it's relying on. So when we start looking at the larger, and if you have a requirement to meet DoD SRG level 4, this is where we start differentiating between GCC and GCC high. So continental US only, high, you'll come down here. Here's where we get to the big one, is when we look at ITAR, EAR, GCC is a hard no, GCC high is your yes, okay? And then from a CJIS agreement level, GCC high has a federal. So this is where entities such as like FBI, DHS, some of those federal law enforcement agencies are looking at existing within those containers. The other customers that go into GCC high are federal DoD contractors. We have plenty of those on the Alaska Native, the Hawaiian Native, even the lower 48 Native American tribes have a lot of large government contracting that they do. And when they want to be in there and they're going to handle ITAR data, if you're going to, you know, meet CMMC level 3 and you don't want the maybe and it being on your staff, you really want it to be, you can achieve everything with the products and capabilities within GCC high. For CMMC level 3, that's where you want to be. Okay. And then you'll see that the customer support is US based restricted personnel. So this is where we really start getting into a lot more of the controls as to who's in the environment, and that's why ITAR is specifically supported in here, et cetera. And you're going to start seeing Microsoft refer to these clouds as sovereign clouds, because we have the compliance and capabilities in there to guarantee the customers that that data is 100% theirs. You know, all the federal governments, state, local governments all have these concerns as well. Even in our tribal entities, there's a lot of conversation about sovereign. So for anyone that has questions about that sovereign cloud, feel free to reach out on the side and we can talk more about it and some of the specifics behind that area. So just a quick thing of what GCC versus GCC high delivers on. And we try to make this as easy as possible for people because, of course, it is FedRAMP high on both platforms. All right, DFARS is supported. When we get in, we have the DISA cloud computing. GCC is only an impact level 2. Okay, GCC high is where you can store ITAR data. All right, we're at an impact level 4. And then if you go into GCC high DoD's cloud, that's impact level 5. And just so everyone knows that DoD cloud is DoD entities at this time only. There's not anyone doing contracts with DoD can't get in there. That is really your DoD environment. All right. Here's one of the big differentiators, and this gets important. So you'll see a lot of people talk about cloud services and they'll just say, hey, our container's FedRAMP high. Okay, well, to what level of services that you offer within that service are actually FedRAMP high? All right, so within our Azure government platform, there's 122 of those services that are already authorized and fall within the FedRAMP high services. All right, So we get pretty specific on this right down the line. It helps a lot as you're looking at different clouds and everything. This is one of the things I would recommend to everyone is make sure that it's not them just saying their cloud is FedRAMP high. Look at the services that operate within there that you might need to take advantage of and make sure that they're all operating at that same level. All right, for CJIS, so Microsoft and the state and local governments have actually been working on this pretty hard. We've now met compliance requirements at the state and local government level for 45 of the different states. That's pretty significant. I think previously it may have only been 37. So hopefully those couple outliers that are still out there continue to work on that, and we can hit those same compliance across every state there is, just to make it easy. All right. For those of you that haven't heard CMMC, so that's referring to the new Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. So this was built out really in response to try to protect the country's critical information. In the past, for people that have been in this game for long enough, you used to hear about retinal scans and gold disc scans and having to meet certain compliance boundaries. If you failed, you had so much time to remediate. CMMC is bringing a lot more maturity to that and setting the standards and requirements at a higher level than in the past. You know, one of the things that's advanced significantly over the years is the cyber threats. Well, we need to position ourselves across the board with a stronger stance to protect against those. Okay. So big things: controlled unclassified information, your CUI, and then the federal contract information. So I wouldn't say it necessarily replaces, but it definitely builds on the NIST 800-171 standards and DFARS clauses. There's a lot more coming on that. There's some simplification that's occurring in the background with CMMC. And, you know, if everyone remembers, by this time last year, people were supposed to be compliant and already going through audits. The federal government's pushed that out a little bit because it is a very heavy lift for people to complete. Just remember that the federal government already, you know, accepted responsibility and said that they expect contracts to have additional costs built in for you as customers, contractors, entities to be able to cover those costs as you're doing business with them.
Now, Bill, as you know, if you think back to some of the original NIST regulations and other things, and how eventually a lot of states and other places started adapting some of those into their contracting language, or just their other expectations, for even their own agencies and entities. Have you heard, or do you expect that some of the CMMC related things, even outside of the DoD, might start expanding into, might be adapted even by other agencies?
Yeah, there is talk in some of the federal civilian agencies of adopting CMMC. It's just, think of it really as best practices. There's a lot there, and when you're dealing with critical information, and we can make that case really at any level, especially when we have systems that house our employees' information in them, our citizens' information in them, any critical financial information. It's all data that should be protected. So there's really a big press to get as many people going and taking these on. If you look at the big financial segments, you know, all the financial people out there have really pushed to increase their cybersecurity maturity as well. You'll hear, you know, people have gone zero trust, and then they're trying to put data controls, information protection in place as well. What's great is, as you're going through these journeys and trying to increase your posture, if you're in our O365 M365 tenants, there is a compliance manager in there that can help guide you through this. And I may be getting ahead on a slide just because it comes naturally.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll see that that compliance slide here in just a little bit.
Yep. So here's something that I alluded to. So CMMC model 1.0 had actually 5 different levels. With all the work that's been done in getting auditors certified and going through things, and the vast majority of people really struggling and trying to understand what they have to achieve and get to, it's been simplified down to 3 levels now: a foundational, an advanced, and an expert. Okay. Stay tuned on all of this stuff. I would not. I've seen some people take the approach that they think it's just going to be delayed further and further. Having worked in DoD space at a federal contractor and supporting our national security group and other FedCiv agencies, I'm going to tell you, if you're not working on this and you're working in that space, you want to start, because at some point they're going to hold people's feet to the fire. And if you're not working towards it, there could be repercussions, or someone's going to say, hey, look, until you get to at least this level, we're going to have to put a pause on contracts, or on certain segments of contracts. So make sure you're at least working towards it, and you've got a well-documented plan, and you understand all of the things. If you haven't talked to a CMMC auditor, I would highly recommend engaging one. If you need one to talk to, feel free to reach out. That we are aware of a couple that work in the space and have done an extremely great job of helping customers understand for their specific environment where they should be working towards, and the people that need to be covered by that. I think we've probably covered a lot of this already, but just a quick thing. Let's look at that highlighted section here. Okay, so if you're looking at CMMC level 1, you could achieve that across the 4 different instances of cloud that Microsoft has. Okay, if you're looking at level 2 to 3, not in commercial, GCC is a yes, but down here we say CUI specified, so ITAR, nuclear, etc., not suitable, requires the US sovereignty. Okay, and when we say not suitable, we do not support that level of data in that cloud. And if it was accidentally put in there, there's reporting requirements that need to take place, everything. Okay, and then we call out ITAR again is a big no. All right, and then level 2 and 3, yes, across the board, whether you're GCC high, or if there's someone out there that's listening in for DoD, yes, within the IL5 cloud, absolutely.
All right, so here's that compliance scorecard you were talking about.
Absolutely. So this is probably one of the greatest tools within there for helping customers with compliance. So you can come in and actually configure and choose the assessments you want to run. So if you're going after CMMC level 3, it tells you 56% here. Well, you can actually click on this view improvement actions. Okay, and it will drop down and show you all of the categories that it looks at for CMMC level 3 and give you the individual scores on each one. And each one is hyperlinked, and it will tell you the steps you can take to improve that score. So really, really powerful, and we'll do that across everything you see here. There are dozens of different compliance audits you can run on your own environment to see where you're at scoring wise, and then a really nice guide as to how to improve that score. Okay, and then here's just a little bit on how we're calculating that compliance score. So you'll notice here, there's 16,293 points that were achieved out of 21,539. Well, if you look out of that Microsoft managed points achieved, 16,238 out of the 16,513. So there's policies and configuration points that we provide within there that aren't fully deployed. And then on the customer managed, these are things that One, you may not have the product license in the tenant to be able to achieve. Two, you may not have turned the feature on, or you may not have configured the policy. There are certain things that come default out of the box. I would never trust any of the settings that are on default. I would always look and review and make sure they're meeting the requirements that you need them to meet. Okay, so we look at mandatory, discretionary, the preventative, detective. And when we say detective, so the auto investigate and full investigate, can you follow identity through the entire platform that's associated with the threat that's come in? And your corrective side, is it 100% manual? Are there things that you can automate? Do you have them automated, or are they just set up as alerts and they expect human interaction to be able to remediate and correct?
All right, Bill. Well, thank you so much for the insight and the deep dive into the different compliance areas and how those can be supported throughout the government cloud and levels of the government cloud.
You're welcome, Matt.
And then when we talk about how can you start making the government cloud work for you, Arctic IT is a strong partner in helping our customers make best use of the government cloud options out there. In that regard, we have a strong depth of expertise in the government cloud, and we are one of the very first partners to achieve an authority to operate in the government cloud to help deploy a cloud solution for the Department of the Interior years ago when the GCC was still shiny new. Right, and so we've been focused on all different types of business applications in both clouds, commercial cloud and the government cloud, and really having the best practice and compliance-minded aspect with a security-first approach to all we do. Right, so and we're very proud of our heritage being owned by the Doyon Alaska Native Corporation. So we are an ANC 8A. We're proud to work within with other tribal entities as well as government agencies, both federally, state, and local around the country. Now, just a couple of ways that solutions like this have been achieved in the government cloud and where Arctic IT has been involved. And one of our proud customers is the Army Emergency Relief, just providing great services to our deployed military members in the Army around the world. And so they needed, it's very important, controlled data, because it's a lot of information about their soldiers and service members and how can they support them, coming from a very legacy application to something that needed to be modern in a very secure cloud to help meet their demand for their deployed members. And then implementing a GCC solution using Office 365 and Dynamics 365 components. A lot of those things that we saw earlier, the entirety of the Azure services available in the government community cloud to just help them achieve better access to that data, secure access to that data, and to be able to better serve their members that are serving our country while they're out and abroad. And at the state and local level, we were very proud for the opportunity to work with Seattle Public Utilities as they have a great goal of just protecting this Seattle watershed and the staff that needs to cover over 100,000 acres of information with lack of good service, and then automating those processes and getting the information at their fingertips, again, with some of the compliance support of the GCC that they needed. So being able to use, again, the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform solutions in the GCC to really help them achieve just a better management of what they're doing, making life easier for their employees while they're out doing so, while maintaining the compliance and security of the data all throughout. So with that, we know that, as you heard Bill talking, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of possibilities with what you can do with the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. So whether you're just dipping your toes into the possibilities for your government in the cloud, whether that's on the commercial side or whether you truly need the government cloud compliance options that are there, just exploring the possibilities for things, whether it's accounting and finance or citizen engagement or other areas of modernization that you need, starting with the Microsoft Cloud and just exploring those possibilities. And then truly assessing your compliance requirements, right? You need to understand what truly do you need. We've had a number of conversations over the years where folks just assumed that they needed the GCC because it was more secure. But as we found out, it is not necessarily more secure. It's just gone through the additional steps, the different personnel around there in order to achieve different levels of compliance, right? So if you are a tribal entity, a tribal government, but you're not managing things like criminal justice information, or you don't have other aspects, you might not need to have the compliance associated with the government cloud and be able to deploy in the commercial cloud where things are just a little bit more streamlined in how you do so. And then engaging and then making sure that you're engaging with your IT, your internal IT, with a partner like Microsoft and Arctic IT, to really then understand how other folks have achieved some of the similar goals that you have with the government cloud or commercial cloud, and just looking at, again, those breadth of possibilities within the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. So with that, we're grateful for the opportunity to have an expert like Bill here, just educating us on the differences of the GCC and the components of there. We'd like to open up for questions. We've got plenty of time here, and grateful for the opportunity to answer those for you.
Thank you, Matt and Bill. If you want to use the questions box, that would be great to enter your questions. I see one here. Okay, I am at a state government airport. Which level would I fit into?
Bill, do you have any experience with airports to speak to that?
Not necessarily, but my first question would be, are any of the employees that are on your platform you support law enforcement officers? And if they are, then the first thing that comes to mind is CJIS. So, you know, find out who your information security officer there is and have the conversation and find out what the compliance requirements are for the different departments that you support. And that's really where I go. I like to understand what the compliance requirement is before I pick a cloud and say this is where you need to be.
That's good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your question. And also, can you describe the best practice to migrate from commercial cloud to GCC?
Yeah, so this is really where you probably want to look at engaging a partner that does this work. Okay, it can be a heavy lift. There's two ways to migrate. You can either pull everything down to an on-prem infrastructure and then reconnect to the new cloud, or you can go through our partners, and our partners have the software license to be able to do the move from one cloud to the other. And typically Azure gets used as a broker to do the two connections and then, you know, pull the data and repopulate it. If you're going to GCC high, that's a whole nother level, and that's really something you want someone with expertise that's done those moves.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, and then this question kind of goes along with that. Can I use the commercial and government cloud for different applications?
So you can, and I'll tell you, you know, being a Microsoft employee, I have a GCC high user account and I have a commercial user account. I will tell you, as an employee, it's extremely frustrating bouncing back and forth because not everything has been built out into our government platform that I need, and because corporate still maintains our healthcare and other benefits and stuff over there. You can. Do you want to have users completely segmented off from one another? You know, there's some challenges there. You need to look at how your workforce works, the platforms they access, etc. I do know we do have a couple other customers that have done the same as Microsoft. Some of the big federal DoD contractors, a couple of our Alaska Native corporations have decided to go this route where the people that have to deal with the CMMC level 3 and ITAR data have an account in GCC high, but they still maintain an account over in the commercial environment to do all of their regular internal corporate activities that they have to do. Just understand it's two different environments. There's some challenges there. There's some interop challenges and collaboration challenges that you have to understand. And of course, luckily there is a cost.
Now we can say that we have had a necessity and an opportunity to help some customers utilize both. Great examples might be if you have like a front-end citizen portal where you want folks to be able to interact with. That portal was deployed to the commercial cloud using Power Platform to get the portal out there. Then that data, once collected and brought in, the data that needed to be transmitted over was then done so securely into the government cloud for some of the back-end operations. So there might be times where it makes sense, by specifically architected to be utilizing both for a specific business case for that, which would be different than what Bill was talking about, interacting between all of your M365 and other pieces for the compliance aspect for your authentication.
Great. Thank you, Bill and Matt. Here's another question. What are the pre-qualifications for the GCC?
Bill, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, pre-qualifications for GCC are pretty simple. You're either a state or local government entity or one of the federal entities. For our tribal side, any of the Alaska Native, Hawaiian Native, or our Native American tribes here in the lower 48 all qualify for GCC. It's a simple form to fill out. It takes less than 2 minutes. It's really your contact information, a link to your website, and your email address. It goes to our team that does the eligibility checks. They're going to look up if you're an Alaska Native corporation, for example. They're going to look at your company's website and look to see that it says that you're affiliated with an Alaska Native corporation. Look it up, make sure it all ties back. That process on a good day takes about 48 to 72 hours for approval. If we get hit with another pandemic, I will tell you, during the pandemic, sometimes it was taking 2 to 3 weeks for those approvals to come in because we were getting a lot of orders that had to be verified before they could proceed.
Wow, thank you so much, Bill. And if I think that's all the questions for now.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you again for attending today. We hope that you took away something meaningful and how you might be able to analyze what the opportunities and options in front of you, and maybe the questions you need to get answered as far as your compliance requirements for those things. Therefore, verify which of the Microsoft clouds is the best fit for your business purpose there. We invite you to connect with us there at connectedarctic.com for further questions, and maybe we could start helping you talk through the journey that you've got in front of you to make that migration to the Microsoft Cloud. We look forward to connecting with you again soon. And for any of our tribal government folks, Bill and I will both be at TribalNet next week. So if you happen to be attending, please stop by our booth and we'll be able to engage with you in person. So have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and thank you again for joining us.
Take care, everyone.
And thank you, Bill.